Greetings everybody, 'tis I, 480 volts. Today I'd like to talk about a little series called Final Fantasy, one of Square-Enix's more well-known RPG series. I was introduced to the franchise a few years ago despite not really ever playing RPGs prior, and I took to it very quickly. For this video we're going to be taking a look at the very first entry to this series, which, like The Legend of Zelda, I have never played until this review, so let's see how it holds out.
Well, I guess it all starts with Hironobu Sakaguchi. He was a developer for Square and had wanted to make an RPG for a long time. But Square refused to give him permission as they expected low sales of such a product. However, when Dragon Quest, an RPG created by Enix... Wait a minute, Square? Enix?
Yeah, believe it or not, for those of you who didn't know, Square-Enix used to be two separate companies called Square and Enix, and many years later they merged into one.
When Dragon Quest was released and proved to be a hit in Japan, Square reconsidered its stance on the genre and approved Sakaguchi's version of an RPG. The game was released in Japan on the original NES in 1987 and then in North America in 1990. So did the game measure up to the potential set by Dragon Quest? Well, let's put it this way. The game was called Final Fantasy for two reasons. One, Sakaguchi had decided that if the game sold poorly, he would leave the video game development industry and return to university. Two, Square was on the edge of bankruptcy and was prepared for the strong possibility that this would be their last game created. And then they made another one, and another, and another, and oh my gosh, they made so many Final Fantasy titles and it feels like the series will never end. The story is relatively simple, at least by Square RPG standards. You see, most Square RPGs are notorious for having heavy storylines with a sea of plot twists, and sometimes they can get hard to follow. This game's story is pretty easy to follow, but if you're having trouble, I'll help you try and make sense out of it. Basically, the world is screwed and you have to unscrew it. That's basically the gist of it. The game opens with a text monologue telling you that the elements of the world, earth, wind, and fire, and water, are behaving strangely. The world's only hope lies in a prophecy that tells of the warriors of light who will restore the elements back to their proper state. You, the player, control four little dudes who have wandered into a quaint little town called Corneria, each holding a darkened orb. Upon entering Corneria, the dudes are immediately charged with rescuing Sarah, the princess of Corneria, who has been kidnapped by this jerk named Garland. Oh yeah, save the princess. That's totally an original plot device that is deep and meaningful. Hey, but let's not talk trash about Garland. He's actually quite possibly one of the scariest and nastiest villains of any game, period. He lets you know right away he doesn't play around. When confronted, he laughs maniacally and threatens to knock you all down. So obviously I'm joking and making fun of NES's translational quirks. Anyway, after defeating the big wuss and rescuing the cute girl, the residents of Corneria decide that the four dudes are the legendary warriors of light and must save the world from certain death. Because rescuing a princess from a pathetic loser takes just as much strength, courage, and bravery as saving the world from annihilation. I mean, we all know that they're the Light Warriors simply because this is a JRPG and they are our main protagonists. After that, it's pretty simple. The Light Warriors travel around the world to different locations meeting humans, fairies, elves, dwarves, mermaids, and even dragons. Many of the towns you encounter have items you need, and to acquire said items you must assist the townsfolk with some problem they're facing, which usually results in defeating some ugly monsters. Eventually you will learn that the orbs hold the power of the four elements of the earth, and that they were cursed 400 years ago by the four fiends, Leek, Kari, Kraken, and Tiamat. Now you must enter their respective domains and defeat them in battle, which results in one of the orbs regaining its true power and shining once more. Upon restoring all four orbs, we learn that there is a higher power that is continuing to ensnare the earth, and to defeat it we must travel 2,000 years into the past. Doing so takes us to the final lair, where we must re-fight the four fiends and face off against the true evil. Garland? Well, it turns out that after his initial defeat, Garland was rescued by the four fiends, who then sent him 2,000 years into the past. Garland then learned that this was where the fiends originated from, so he sent them 2,000 years into the future, where they would eventually be defeated by us, so they could send him back to the past, creating an infinite time loop that allows Garland and the Fiends to live forever. Somehow. Look, just do yourself a favor and don't try to make sense of this. I've watched enough Star Trek to know that this doesn't even come close to following any sort of rules concerning temporal mechanics. Just face off against Garland's true form, Chaos, defeat him, and save the day. The ending prologue then tells us that the Light Warriors are returned to the present but lose all traces of their journey and pretty much all of their credibility, making their story nothing more than a mere legend that people tell. Ah yes, the story was wiped from existence trope. I hate when games do that. Even though the story on a whole is pretty dull, there are some little details I appreciate. Like when you first meet Garland, he is surrounded by 5 bats. Later on, when you learn about the orbs, you learn that 400 years ago, 5 warriors tried to stop the 4 fiends and failed miserably. When preparing to enter the final lair, it is revealed that the bats are the original 5 warriors transformed by the fiends. There's also this nice little town you can enter where among the residents is this cute little girl telling you how beautiful her legs are and how much she loves legs. Kind of an odd thing to say, right? Well, upon entering Kraken's lair, one of the encaptured mermaids tell us that she and her friend got separated, and she wonders if her friend made it to shore and received human legs. I think it's safe to say that she made it safely to the shore and is rocking her beautiful new legs. Don't expect any kind of character development, though. The Light Warriors are completely silent and have less life in them than pieces of cardboard. The story isn't groundbreaking, but it gets the job done. Like most RPGs released of that time period, the gameplay involves exploring the world map, getting into random battles and fighting monsters, giving you experience points and money, buying items, weapons, and armor from different towns, collecting treasure in various dungeons, and so on and so forth. You'll start the game traversing the world map on foot, which only takes you so far, and then eventually you're able to up your transportation methods, such as getting a ship, which allows you to sail in water, a canoe, which allows you to paddle through narrow streams, and an airship, which gives you full access to the entire world map. The gameplay is a kind of a mixed bag. When you start the game, you are tasked with the job of choosing classes and names for your 4 characters. You have 6 classes to choose from. The fighter, who wears heavy armor and weapons and is great for offensive purposes. The black belt, who is a little slow taking off but ends up doing more damage with his bare fists than any weapon. The thief, who has decent defense, HP, and attack power but crappy weapons. The black mage, who specializes in offensive magic. The white mage, who is dang near essential for staying alive throughout the game. And the red mage, who is basically a combination of the fighter and black and white mages with some major limitations on the weapon and spell types. With 4 characters and 6 classes, you have many different combinations to choose from. For this playthrough, I chose a fighter, black belt, red mage, and white mage, but maybe you'd like a thief, white mage, black belt, and another thief. Maybe you'd like 1 fighter and 1 mage of each color. Maybe you'd like a party entirely made of fighters. I mean, if you could stay alive, you'll do some massive damage to your enemies. Or maybe a party of 4 white mages. Okay, no, that sucks. But the point is, there is plenty of room for experimentation. If you like this game, there is definitely more than enough replay value. Note that halfway through the game, you have the option to present a special artifact to the Dragon King Bahamut, causing him to be impressed with your courage and prompting him to upgrade your entire party, making them even stronger and more powerful, as well as giving them access to a few new weapons or spells. Your mage characters have spell charges which allow them to cast each spell or group of spells a certain amount of times. The number of spell charges increases as your mages level up. I actually prefer this system to the standard MP system that is used in later games simply because you can cast low-level spells without it affecting the amount of times you cast higher-level spells. However, there are some aspects about the game mechanics that I just don't like because I am so used to the mechanics of later games. For example, if a character is KO'd in battle, you have no way of reviving them until the battle is over, which means that they miss out on valuable experience points. I also hate how tedious the weapons and armor is. When you buy a new weapon or piece of armor, you have no way of knowing how it will affect your character until you try it on, so you have to spend the money blindly hoping for the best. Also, to see the differences it makes, you need to select the character's stats before applying the equipment, then apply the new equipment, and select their stats now so you can see what actually changed. You can also only sell weapons at a weapon shop, only sell armor at an armor shop, and only sell items at an item shop. If you have mages that can share spells, like in my case of a white and red mage, you need to buy their spells multiple times, once for each mage, though that actually seems fair to me. Also, you have no way of restoring spell charges outside of using a tent, cabin or house on the world map, or sleeping at an inn in a village. This makes the final area particularly tricky as you need to use your healing spells sparingly. You also only get one type of healing item that you can only hold up to 99 of. Also, this is just a little thing, but when you start the game and are asked to name your characters, the names are limited to 4 characters. Probably the biggest offender is the fact that your characters will attack on what you have told them to attack and nothing else. In later games, if you encounter several enemies and you have 4 people attack one enemy, but say it dies after the first hit, the rest of the characters will attack one of the other enemies. But in this game, if you command more than one character to attack one enemy, and that enemy dies before everybody gets their hits in, whoever else was supposed to attack that enemy will now attack empty air, thus wasting their turn. The battles are completely turn-based, which isn't anything hard, but I am used to the active time battle system from later games, so yeah. I found the game to be quite unforgiving, but not terribly difficult. I spent some time at the beginning of the game level grinding, and I was able to beat the game at level 28. I don't much care for the idea of spending hours upon hours of grinding to ensure that my characters reach level 99, but if you're into that kind of thing, then this game should be a cakewalk for you. Overall, I would say that my main problems with the gameplay mechanics are that they have not aged very well. The graphics are smooth and easy on the eyes considering what they had to work with at the time. The music was composed by Nobuo Uematsu. The soundtrack is okay, but not very great. The overworld and airship themes are quite upbeat and lively, the town music wears old real fast, the dungeon themes are great, and the battle music is okay, but it gets old as it's the only battle music in the game. Literally. There is no special theme for bosses or super bosses. Every single battle, including the final boss, has the same piece of music. It's not a bad theme compositionally speaking, but you'll get sick of it pretty quickly considering how many times you hear it. My opinion of this game is much like my opinion of The Legend of Zelda. I imagine it was a huge deal back when it was first released, but after playing some of the later, better games in the franchise, I don't see the need to play this one, except for completionists like myself, or people who have fond memories with this game. Now that I've played it, well, I can't be bothered to play it again. Nevertheless, I am still glad Square made this game, if only because it allowed them to remain in the video game business to this very day, and they would release many more titles in the series that would only build upon this initial release, as well as other wonderful titles.
Well, thanks for joining me for our look at the very first game of the Final Fantasy series. Eventually we'll get to Final Fantasy II, but I've got other games I want to talk about as well, so please remember to hit the subscribe button, the like button, the comments, and do all that stuff, and I will see you in the next video. Peace out!